In the dim, flickering light of closing cafe, Alara stared across the small table, her heart suddenly seizing in her chest. She was looking at Isabel, her identical twin sister, found after 30 years of separation, a mirror image reflecting shared smiles and unspoken understanding. But Alara's gaze snagged on something impossible, something terrifyingly familiar. Tracing the delicate curve of Isabel's jawline was a thin, pale scar, exactly like Alara's own, a mark etched into Alara's memory by the sharp pain of jagged rocks from a childhood fall, a fall Isabel couldn't possibly have experienced. Yet there it was, identical, perfect, wrong. The joyous miracle of their reunion fractured in that instant, replaced by a chilling, disorienting dread. This face, so impossibly like her own, suddenly felt like a mask. Who was this woman sitting across from her? And how did she bear a scar tied to a memory that belonged only to Alara? The answer, buried beneath layers of secrets and desperate longing, would prove more disturbing than any ghost story, uncovering a truth etched not just in skin, but in the very fabric of identity itself. Slight musical swell and fade. Before the email, before the impossible scar, Alara Carmichael's life unfolded with the quiet precision of the archive she curated. Her world was one of labeled boxes, catalog histories, and the comforting scent of aging paper. At the city's historical society, she found solace in piecing together the fragmented narratives of the past, imposing order on chaos. This methodical nature spilled into her personal life. The neat, almost sparse apartment overlooking a sleepy park, the ritualized brewing of her morning tea, the specific route of her daily jog. She was a creature of habit, finding safety in predictable rhythm of her days. Yet, this carefully constructed order couldn't entirely silence a deeper, more elusive feeling, a persistent sense of absence, like a phantom limb tingling with lost sensation. Adopted as an infant, raised by loving parents who knew little of her origins beyond the sealed court documents, she'd always felt incomplete, not unloved, never that, but as if a crucial part of her own story remained locked away. Sometimes she'd catch a reflection at an odd angle and feel a jolt of unfamiliarity, or experience waves of inexplicable déjà vu in crowded spaces. Dreams occasionally flicker with images of shared glances, whispered words just out of earshot, the feeling of another presence mirroring her own. Her adoptive parents were kind, supportive, offering to help her search when she came of age. But Alara, or the woman she believed herself to be, had hesitated, fear of disrupting the known, fear perhaps of disappointment, or fear of uncovering something unsettling, kept her inquiries tentative, confined to idle thoughts rather than decisive action. What if the missing piece was simply missing? The catalyst came, as it often does, with a milestone, her 30th birthday. Staring into the bathroom mirror, her fingers instinctively traced a faint, silvery line along her jaw. The scar, one of her earliest, albeit hazy, memories clung to it. Dappled sunlight through green leaves, the rough, cool textured stone under her small hands, a sudden, sharp blossoming of pain, then concerned faces looming above. Her parents' narrative was simple, consistent. A tumble near an old stone wall at her grandparents' country house, just before she turned 4. A typical childhood mishap, leaving its permanent, pale signature. That day, staring at the scar, the urge to know her origins became imperative. With a sense of finality, she submitted her DNA to a major online ancestry database. Then, she waited, letting the quiet routine of her life reclaim her, the small flame of hope flickering but not extinguished. Months slid by, marked by the changing seasons outside her window, the rhythmic cataloging of forgotten lives. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, an email notification blinked on her screen. High probability DNA match found. Her breath caught. Clicking the link revealed the prediction. Sibling. First degree. Attached was a message, penned with a tentative hopefulness that echoed her own unspoken longing. The sender's name was Isabel Vance, and below the text was a photograph. Ilera felt the air leave her lungs. Staring back from the screen was her own face, or rather, a face so uncannily like hers it defied belief. Same deep-set hazel eyes, same slight curve of the lips. Even the way a lock of dark hair escaped her temple was identical. Isabel lived 2 states away. Her story mirrored Ilera's in broad strokes. Adopted, recently bereaved of her adoptive parents, now seeking biological connections. Their first phone call crackled with nervous energy, awkward pauses giving way to overlapping sentences, bursts of surprised laughter. Hours vanished as they unearthed a staggering list of parallels, a shared passion for vintage photography, similar career trajectories leaning towards visual detail. Isabel was a graphic designer. Identical phobias, spiders, and oddly mayonnaise. Even the same habit of humming unconsciously while concentrating. It felt less like meeting a stranger and more like discovering a lost recording of herself. They agreed to meet, choosing a neutral location, a small, well-regarded cafe in a town equidistant from both their homes. The weeks leading up to the meeting passed in a blur of heightened anticipation. Ilera devoured the photos Isabel sent, tracing the familiar lines of that other face, her face. The feeling of incompleteness, the quiet ache she carried for 3 decades, began to recede, replaced by the warm, burgeoning certainty of imminent wholeness. Packing her overnight bag, her meticulously ordered world felt poised on the edge of a joyous, wondrous disruption. She was finally going to meet the missing piece of her puzzle. Sound of gentle rain begins. Cafe ambience underneath. The chosen cafe, the Bent Fork, lived up to its quaint name. Exposed brick walls, mismatched chairs, the comforting aroma of brewing coffee and damp coats mingling in the air. Rain lashed against a large front window, painting impressionistic streaks across the glass, blurring the street outside into a watercolored scene. Ilera arrived 20 minutes early, her nerves a frantic hummingbird trapped in her ribcage. She claimed a small, secluded table in the corner, positioning herself so she could see the door, ordering a chamomile tea she barely touched. Each chime of the bell above the entrance sent a jolt through her system. Then she appeared. Isabel stood framed in the doorway, shaking droplets from a bright yellow umbrella, her eyes scanning the room with an expression of nervous excitement that Ilera recognized instantly. It was the same look she'd seen on her own face in the mirror that morning. Their eyes met across the room. Time seemed to stutter. It wasn't just like seeing a reflection. It was profoundly stranger, like encountering a tangible echo, a living embodiment of 30 years of unasked questions and phantom connections made real. Isabel's smile dawned slowly, tentatively, mirroring the one spreading across Ilera's own face. She moved towards the table. Her gait, the way she held her shoulders, even the slight tilt of her head as she navigated the tables, all eerily familiar. Ilera? Isabel's voice was a fraction higher pitched than Ilera's, but the timbre, the underlying melody, was uncannily the same. Isabel. Ilera rose, her legs feeling strangely distant, unsteady. They didn't embrace immediately. They simply stood, separated by a few feet of charged air, absorbing the impossible reality of each other. Tears welled, blurring the already surreal image. The connection was instantaneous, visceral, overwhelming. They finally sat, the initial wave of shock receding, replaced by an eager flood of words. They talked for hours, the conversation weaving through childhoods lived apart yet strangely parallel. Phones were produced, photos compared, identical expressions in christening gowns, matching gap-toothed grins in school pictures, even startlingly similar awkward formal dance poses. They laughed until tears streamed, discovering shared allergies, nickel, oddly specific, a mutual aversion to the smell of boiled cabbage, and the same habit of arranging their bookshelves by color rather than author. It was intoxicating, a dizzying affirmation of a bond woven into their very DNA. Ilera felt a profound sense of peace settling over her, a feeling of rightness washing away the long-held ache of absence. The puzzle piece hadn't just clicked into place. It had seamlessly merged, completing a picture she hadn't fully realized was unfinished. The afternoon bled into early evening. The cafe gradually emptied, leaving them in a pool of warm lamplight. The rain outside now a gentle, rhythmic tapping against the glass. They leaned closer across the small table, their voices dropping to conspiratorial whispers, sharing secrets and dreams like old friends, like sisters. It was in that moment of comfortable intimacy, as Isabel tilted her head back, laughing softly at a shared anecdote, that Ilera saw it. The lamplight caught the angle of Isabel's jaw. A shadow? A trick of the light? No. Ilera's breath hitched. Her blood seemed to turn to ice water in her veins. There, stark against the smooth skin, was a thin, pale line. Faint, yes, almost invisible in harsher light, but undeniably present. A scar, tracing the exact same curve, the exact same length as the one on Ilera's own jaw. Ilera's smile froze. The laughter died in her throat. Impossible. She knew how she got hers. The fall, the rocks, the stitches, a concrete, albeit fuzzy, memory reinforced by parental accounts and childhood photos. But Isabel couldn't have been there. Your scar. Ilera managed to whisper, her voice tight, barely audible over the cafe's quiet hum and the drumming rain. Isabel's hand flew instinctively to her jaw, her expression shifting from amusement to mild confusion. Oh, this old thing? She gave a small, slightly self-conscious laugh, the sound suddenly grating on Ilera's ears. Yeah, total klutz as a kid. Took a tumble. Ilera stared, her mind frantically trying to process the information, searching for a rational explanation that refused to surface. Coincidence? Could identical twins, separated at birth, somehow sustain identical, specific injuries in separate incidents? The probability felt astronomically low. Where? Ilera pressed. Try and keep the sudden tremor out of her voice, the sharp edge of nascent suspicion. How did it happen? Isabel waved a dismissive hand, her gaze flicking away for a fraction of a second. Oh, playing outside somewhere. Tripped over some rocks, I think. My folks were never totally clear on the details. Said I was more traumatized by the dirt on my favorite dress. She laughed again, a sound that now seemed brittle, forced. She quickly tried to change the subject, asking about Ilera's cat. But Ilera couldn't let it go. The warmth of the reunion was rapidly chilling, replaced by a creeping, pervasive sense of wrongness. Rocks. Ilera echoed, her voice gaining a slight edge despite her efforts. Where exactly? Do you remember? Isabel frowned, pulling back slightly, a flicker of defensiveness in her eyes. Honestly, I don't really remember the place. Just flashes. It was a long time ago. Why the sudden interrogation? Her tone was light, but the underlying tension was palpable. Because Ilera took a slow, deliberate breath, her own hand unconsciously rising to trace the familiar line on her jaw. Because that's precisely how I got mine. Playing near rocks, at my grandparents' old farm. When I was 3, almost 4, a complex expression washed over Isabel's face. Momentary surprise, quickly masked by something else, something guarded, almost calculating. Wow. Seriously? That's wild. What are the odds, huh? Her smile felt painted on. Wild wasn't the word echoing in Ilera's mind. Impossible was. Unsettling. Deceptive. The joyous connection forged over hours of shared similarities now felt overshadowed by this single, glaring point of impossible synchronicity. How could they both possess the exact same mark, supposedly from similar, vaguely recalled childhood accidents? The initial euphoria evaporated, leaving behind the cold, sharp edge of doubt. A question began to form, insistent and disturbing. What wasn't Isabel telling her? And why did this shared scar suddenly feel less like a miracle of biology and more like a carefully placed piece of stagecraft? The drive back to her apartment was thick with more than just a lingering drizzle. A fog of doubt and confusion clouded Alara's thoughts. Isabel's breezy dismissal of the scar coincidence replayed in her mind, each repetition making it sound more hollow, more rehearsed. The vagueness, the quick deflection, it didn't feel like a hazy memory. It felt like evasion, back within the familiar, ordered silence of her apartment. Surrounded by the comforting presence of books and neatly filed documents, Alara tried to regain her equilibrium. It had to be a coincidence, a one-in-a-billion fluke of parallel lives. Perhaps their biological parents carried some genetic quirk, making their jawlines prone to scarring. Perhaps their innate physical coordination, or lack thereof, was identical, leading them both to similar childhood accidents involving rocks. She listed the rationalizations, but they felt like thin paper shields against a rising tide of unease. She pulled out the worn photo album, flipping to the page documenting her early years. There she was, age 3 and a bit, sporting a row of neat stitches along her jaw, her eyes wide with mixture of pain and bewilderment. Her adoptive mother's precise handwriting on the back noted the date and location. Alara's Big Fall, Grandpa's Farm, August 1997. Alara closed her eyes, trying to summon the memory. Sensations returned in fragments. The prickle of dry grass on her legs, the imposing, rough texture of the gray stone wall, the sudden lurching sensation of falling, a sharp, localized pain, then the blurry image of her mother's anxious face. Driven by an urgent need for external validation, she called her adoptive parents. She recounted the meeting first, emphasizing the incredible joy, the uncanny similarities, carefully building up to the crux of her disquiet. And Mom, Dad, the strangest thing happened, Alara began, striving for a casual tone. Isabel, she has a scar. On her jaw, in the exact same place as mine. A beat of silence stretched across the line. Oh! Her mother's voice held genuine surprise. Goodness! How extraordinary. Did she have a fall, too? She said she did. Alara confirmed. Also when she was little, supposedly near rocks. But she was really vague about it. Dismissive, almost. Alara paused, gathering her courage. Do you remember anything else specific about my fall? Anything at all that might explain this? Her mother readily recounted the familiar story. The weekend visit to farm, sold years ago now. Alara toddling too close to the crumbling stone boundary wall. The sudden sharp cry that sent panic through the adults. The frantic drive to the small rural clinic. The reassuring doctor who stitched her up. You were such a brave little thing, her mother recalled, her voice softening with affection. Cried more when I tried to clean it later than when the doctor put the stitches in. Her father, on the extension line, corroborated every detail. Their memories were clear, consistent, anchored by the emotional weight of parental worry. They remembered the event vividly. And crucially, they had never, ever been told Alara was a twin, let alone one who might share such a specific physical mark. The call solidified Alara's unease into something sharper, more focused. Her own fragmented memory, buttressed by her parents' unwavering account in the photographic evidence, felt solid, rooted in verifiable fact. Isabel's account, by contrast, felt amorphous, slippery, lacking any concrete detail. A few days later, after composing and deleting several drafts, Alara sent Isabel a carefully worded text message, aiming for light curiosity. Hey! Still buzzing from our meeting. Smiley face. That scar coincidence is just blowing my mind. Any chance your adoptive parents kept photos from around when you got yours? Would be wild to compare. Just curious. The reply didn't come for nearly 24 hours. When it did, it felt overly bright. Hey you. LOL, right? So bizarre. Nah, my folks weren't really the type to document injuries. Haha. Plus, like I said, total blur. Childhood amnesia. Let's focus on the good stuff. Planning our next day together? Maybe explore that vintage market you mentioned? Smiley face. The excessive use of exclamation points, the casual haha, the immediate pivot away from the subject. It screamed deflection. Why would Isabel be so resistant to exploring this incredible shared physical trait? Unless her story wasn't just hazy, but entirely fabricated. Elara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being deliberately misled. The joy of discovery was now thoroughly tainted by suspicion. She found herself re-examining every detail of their meeting, every shared similarity, wondering what else might be constructed, what else might be false. Her archivist mind, trained to look for inconsistencies in hidden narratives, kicked into gear. She tried calling Isabel directly, wanted to gently push for more details, but the calls consistently went to voicemail. Subsequent texts received replies that were brief, friendly, but increasingly evasive whenever the subject strayed near their past or the scar. Isabel seemed to be subtly creating distance, pulling back just as Alara's suspicion intensified. The identical scar, initially a breathtaking symbol of their fated connection, now felt like a deliberate, unsettling anomaly, a discordant note in an otherwise harmonious melody. The question shifted from bewildered "how could this happen?" to a chilling why. Why would Isabel construct such a specific lie about her past? What purpose did it serve? The wall Isabel seemed to be erecting, coupled with the undeniable wrongness of the scar story, propelled Alara beyond hesitant questions. Her innate methodical nature, usually applied to dusty ledgers and faded maps, now focused on perplexing enigma of her supposed twin. If Isabel wouldn't provide answers, Alara's archival instincts told her the truth must exist elsewhere, buried in records, waiting to be unearthed. She began with the basics. Public record searches for Isabel Vance and her late adoptive parents. Birth records, as anticipated, were sealed tight, but she dove into digitized newspaper archives from Isabel's hometown, scoured online yearbooks from local schools, sifted through community newsletters and social club mentions. It was painstaking work, cross-referencing names, dates, addresses, searching for any mention, however small, that might corroborate or contradict Isabel's story. Isabel's adoptive parents appeared unremarkable on paper, pillars of their local community, involved in charity events, seemingly stable. Isabel herself surfaced intermittently. Mentions on school honor rolls, photos and grainy yearbook images showing participation in the art club and the drama society. A picture emerged of a seemingly normal, perhaps somewhat introverted, suburban upbringing. Yet, Alara noticed subtle inconsistencies. There seemed to be fewer candid photos, fewer casual mentions of Isabel during the specific years surrounding the alleged accident, roughly ages 4 to 6. Later photos depicted a quiet, watchful teenager, but drawing conclusions from old pictures felt tenuous. More significantly, Alara could find absolutely no trace of a reported accident involving Isabel around that time. No small-town newspaper snippet about a child's injury, no mention in digitized family letters or publicly accessible records hinting at a significant facial injury requiring stitches. While not definitive proof of a lie, not all childhood accidents make the news, the utter lack of any corroborating detail felt significant. It added another layer to the growing edifice of doubt. Alara briefly considered hiring a private investigator, someone skilled in navigating sealed records and uncovering hidden truths. But the thought felt premature invasive. What if there was a simple explanation she was missing? What if this was all a product of her own overactive imagination, fueled by the intensity of the reunion? She needed more concrete evidence before taking such a drastic step. She turned her attention to the vast, often revealing landscape of the internet. Social media profiles yielded little. Isabel maintained professional online presence as a graphic designer, curated and controlled. But Alara's archival training involved digging deeper, looking for the digital detritus people leave behind. She searched for older usernames, abandoned profiles, forum posts. Her persistence paid off. She unearthed an old, seemingly forgotten personal blog Isabel had maintained during her late teens and early 20s. It was a typical repository of youthful angst, design sketches, critiques of films, and rambling thoughts on art school projects. Most posts were text-heavy, but occasionally, Isabel had uploaded photos. Alara's pulse quickened. She scrolled back methodically, year by year, past college frustrations and explorations of digital art, back further into late high school. And then she found it, buried in a post from almost a decade prior, time-stamped when Isabel would have been around 21. The post was part of a popular online trend. Throwback Thursday, share awkward phase. It contained a small gallery of scanned childhood photos. Her breath caught. The first showed a chubby-cheeked toddler, perhaps 2 years old, beaming uncertainly. The second, Isabel around age 3, sporting pigtails and a missing front tooth. And then the third photo. The caption beneath it read simply, Mrs. Davison's kindergarten class, age 5. Spot the dork in the back row. Alara clicked, enlarging the image, her heart hammering against her ribs. There, in the grainy black and white of the class photo, standing slightly off-center in the back row, was undeniably Isabel. A shy smile played on her lips. Her face, tilted slightly toward the camera, was perfectly clear, unblemished. There was absolutely no trace of any scar, faint or otherwise, on her jawline. Alara leaned back on the screen, a cold wave washing over her. The air felt suddenly thin. This wasn't a matter of unreliable memory, statistical improbability, or coincidence anymore. This was irrefutable proof. Isabel Vance, the woman she had met, the woman claiming to be her twin, did not receive that scar as a young child. The scar Alara had seen in the cafe, the mark that perfectly mirrored her own defining feature, had appeared sometime after the age of 5, likely much later. The lie wasn't just about the circumstances. It was about the timeline, the fundamental origin. Why fabricate such a story? Why go to the trouble of hiding this? The deception felt chillingly deliberate, profoundly calculated. There was no more room for doubt, no more benefit to be given. She had to confront Isabel. No more cautious texts, no more veiled inquiries. She needed a face-to-face meeting, needed to see the reaction when presented with the evidence. She picked up her phone, her hand trembling not with fear, but with a cold, rising anger. She dialed Isabel's number. Miraculously, she answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. Alara? Hi, everything okay? Isabel, we need to talk, Alara said, keeping her voice low, level, masking the turmoil beneath. In person, there are things I found, things I need to understand. A tense silence stretched over the line. Alara could almost hear the frantic calculations happening on the other end. Okay, Isabel finally replied, her voice tight with apprehension. All right, when, where? They agreed to meet again in the same neutral town, but Alara vetoed the cozy cafe. She suggested a public park, a bench under the open sky. She needed space, clarity. Couldn't bear the thought of another intimate setting built on a foundation of lies. As she ended the call, Alara felt a grim sense of purpose settle over her. She had the proof. Now, she needed the truth. But a dark premonition whispered that the explanation for the scar, and perhaps for Isabel herself, was far stranger and more disturbing than a simple lie about a childhood fall. The mystery had shifted from uncanny coincidence to deliberate impersonation, and Alara felt utterly alone, heading toward a confrontation that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew. Before the planned confrontation, an undeniable impulse drew Alara, or rather, the woman realizing she was truly Isabel, back to the source. Not just the source of her scar, but the origin point of the divergence, the place where her life path had irrevocably split from her twins, her grandparents' old farm, the place named in her own hazy memories, confirmed by her adoptive parents, and now looming large as a potential key to understanding the entire deception. The property lay dormant, miles down a neglected country road, sold years ago and left to the slow reclaim of nature. She drove on a bleak, gray morning, the sky bruised with the threat of rain. The further she left the city behind, the heavier the silence seemed to press in. Paved roads gave way to gravel, then dissolved into a deeply rutted dirt track, branches scraping against the car doors. Finally, through a screen of skeletal, leafless trees, the farmhouse emerged. Smaller, sadder than her childhood memory painted it. Peeling paint hanging like sunburnt skin, windows dark and reflective like cataracts on blind eyes. An atmosphere of profound stillness, of time stopped and forgotten, hung over the place, broken only by the melancholic sigh of the wind through dead weeds. She parked where the overgrown drive dissolved into field, the silence amplifying the crunch of her footsteps on the gravel. A tremor ran through her, part apprehension, part a strange, resonant familiarity. This place held the genesis of her physical scar, but now it felt charged with the weight of deeper, hidden wounds. Her eyes immediately sought the stone wall. It stood near the side of the house, lower and more crumbled than she'd pictured, its gray stone softened by moss and lichen. She ran her fingers over the cool, rough surface. Was this the exact spot? She scanned the damp ground, littered with fallen leaves and small stones. Impossible to know for sure after 3 decades. The landscape held its secrets close. She spent the better part of an hour circling the dilapidated house, peering through grimy window panes into rooms choked with dust and shadows. Empty spaces echoed with the ghosts of former lives. The doors were securely locked, weatherwood resisting her tentative pushes. Driven by an instinct she couldn't explain, she pushed through a tangle of thorny bushes around the back, searching for the cellar entrance her parents had sometimes mentioned. Half hidden beneath a cascade of withered ivy, she found it. 2 heavy, slanted wooden doors set into the earth. They were warped, swollen with damp, but one groaned open reluctantly when she threw her shoulder against it. A blast of cool, subterranean air rushed up to meet her, thick with the smell of damp earth, mildew, and something else the scent of things long undisturbed. Switching on her phone's flashlight, its beam cutting a nervous path through the oppressive darkness, she descended the creaking, precarious wooden steps. The cellar was small, its walls rough-hewn stone, the floor packed earth. Discarded remnants of farm life lay scattered about, rusted tools, stacks of empty preserving jars coated in grime, sacks that had long ago surrendered their contents to rot and rodents. Cobwebs hung in heavy, dusty curtains. Her flashlight beam swept methodically across the gloom, catching on glinting glass shards, the curve of a broken pottery jug, and then something else. Tucked away in the deepest corner, almost entirely obscure behind a leaning stack of warped lumber and decaying burlap, was a small, dark wooden box. It didn't look like discarded junk. It looked placed, hidden. Her heart gave a sudden, heavy thud against her ribs. Carefully navigating the debris, she reached the corner and lifted the box. It was surprisingly heavy, crafted from dark, smooth wood bound with tarnished brass fittings. A simple latch held it closed. It wasn't locked. Her fingers, suddenly clumsy and trembling, fumbled with the latch. It sprang open with a faint click. Inside, resting on a bed of faded, moth-eaten burgundy velvet, lay several bundles of letters tied with faded silk ribbons, a small, leather-bound diary with brittle, yellowed pages, and a handful of loose sepia-toned photographs. With a sense of profound gravity, Isabel lifted the diary. The leather cover was dry and cracked. She opened it carefully. The handwriting inside was elegant, looped, recognizably feminine, but marred in places by frantic haste, heavy ink blots, and the unmistakable watermarks of tears. The dates inked at the top of the pages aligned with the period shortly after her birth, nearly 31 years ago. It belonged, she realized with a sickening lurch of certainty, to her biological mother. Sinking onto the cold, damp cellar steps, the weak, inadequate beam of her phone flashlight dancing across the spidery script, she began to read. Time fell away. The musty cellar air seemed to grow colder, heavier. The diary entries painted a harrowing portrait of a young woman utterly overwhelmed. A single mother, isolated, grappling with profound financial insecurity and the crushing weight of postpartum depression following the unexpected arrival of twins. They are startlingly alike. One entry read, the handwriting neat here, mirrors of each other. Only Alara's boldness distinguishes her. She climbs, she explores. Isabel watches, always watches. Quieter, more hesitant. Then came the entries detailing the days leading up to the accident Isabel remembered to the haze of childhood trauma. Taking the girls to Mama's farm for the weekend. The quiet will help. Need space to think. Such difficult decisions ahead. How can I keep them both? Isabel's hand shook violently as she turned the page to the entry dated the day after her fall. The script was jagged, barely legible, the ink smeared in places. God forgive me. It happened in a blink. Alara darting near the wall, the loose stones, the awful sound. Her cry, so much blood from such a little cut, rushed her to the clinic. Stitches. She hardly whimpered for the needle. So brave, my little Alara. But Isabel saw everything, stood frozen. Then the screaming started, hysterical, unreachable. She won't let me hold her, won't eat, just stares with those huge, terrified eyes, sees the wall, I think, even indoors. She read on, a horrifying understanding dawning with each desperate line. The entries chronicle the mother's descent into panic and despair. Alara, the adventurous twin, was physically injured but recovering. Isabel, the quieter twin, seemed shattered by the witnessed trauma, withdrawing into a shell of silent terror. The mother felt utterly incapable, drowning under the weight of caring for one physically wounded child and another psychologically scarred. And then the final, devastating decision, penned in a hand that trembled across the page. I cannot do it. I cannot manage them both. Not like this. The agency called back a good family, stable, loving. They can give her what I cannot. It must be done quickly. Quietly. It's the only way. For her sake. For Isabel. She needs to escape this memory, this place. They will take the injured one, the one marked by the fall. Alara. Yes, it will be easier to explain the separation that way. A sign, perhaps. They will take Alara. The diary slipped from Isabel's numb fingers, landing with a soft thud on the dirt floor. No, the world tilted violently, the cellar seeming to spin around her. It wasn't Alara who was relinquished for adoption. It was Isabel, the biological mother, distraught, confused, or perhaps making a desperate, flawed calculation, had switched them. The child sent away, the child raised by the Carmichaels, the child bearing the scar from the fall, was the real Isabel. Her, the woman she had met at the cafe, the woman claiming the name Isabel Vance, the woman raised by the Vances. She was the original Illara, the twin who hadn't fallen, the twin who had witnessed the accident, the twin who shouldn't have the scar. Her entire life, her identity, fractured in that instant. She wasn't Illara Carmichael. She was Isabel. The sister she felt such an overwhelming connection with wasn't her lost twin Isabel. She was Illara, the sister their mother had kept. But the scar, the chilling proof from the kindergarten photograph, flashed in her mind. The woman she met, the real Illara, didn't have that scar at age 5. So why did she bear it now? An identical mark, a perfect, physical echo of the injury sustained by the twin who did fall? The implications were staggering, nauseating. The woman waiting to meet her wasn't just lying about a scar's origin. She was entangled in a deception that ran bone deep, a lie woven into the very fabric of her identity. Kneeling in the cold, damp darkness of the cellar, clutching the secrets of the past, Isabel knew the impending confrontation had shifted into something far more terrifying. It wasn't just about exposing a lie about a scar. It was about confronting a woman who had potentially stolen her sister's life, her sister's name, and perhaps something more. The chilling question now became, if the real Illara didn't have the scar, and this woman did, who was she really? Isabel felt encased in a layer of ice as she drove towards the park, the weight of the diary and letters in her bag a tangible burden against the passenger seat. Her name was Isabel, the identity she'd lived under for 30 years, Illara Carmichael, felt like borrowed clothing. The woman waiting for her on that park bench, the woman she believed to be Isabel Vance, was supposedly Illara, her sister, the one who stayed, the one who witnessed the fall, the one whose childhood photos proved she didn't have the scar. She spotted her immediately, sitting alone on a weathered wooden bench beneath the sprawling, bare branches of an ancient oak tree. Against the vast, indifferent gray sky, she looked fragile, small. The uncanny resemblance, which had initially brought such joy, now felt grotesque, a cruel parody. Isabel parked and walked across the damp grass, her steps leaden. Each footfall felt like a betrayal of the identity she'd unknowingly carried. The woman looked up as Isabel approached, her eyes wide with a mixture of dread and forced nonchalance. A flicker practiced. Friendly smile touched her lips before dying instantly under Isabel's cold gaze. "Hey!" the woman murmured, her voice barely carrying on the breeze. Isabel didn't reply. She sat down on the far end of the long bench, the distance between them feeling both vast and suffocating. She placed her bag firmly between them, a silent boundary. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic and the nervous flutter of a bird in the oak's branches. You said you found things," the woman prompted finally, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "Yes," Isabel said, her voice quiet but resonant with newfound, painful certainty. "I found this." She reached into her bag, not for the diary, but for the printout of the kindergarten photograph. She held out flat on her palm. "You, age 5, no scar." The woman flinched, recoiling as if the paper itself were hot. Her face drained of color, leaving her skin looking translucent, fragile. She stared at the photo, her eyes darting frantically, then looked away, unable to meet Isabel's steady gaze. I don't know what that is," she stammered, her voice thin. "It's old. Maybe it's not even me, or it's been retouched." "Stop lying," Isabel commanded, her voice cutting to pathetic denials, sharp with the pain of betrayal. "I know you didn't get the scar when you were a child. I was at the farm, our grandparents' farm. I found our biological mother's diary, letters, photographs." The woman's head snapped up, her eyes wide with raw panic. "The diary? What did it say? She whispered, her facade crumbling completely. It said the truth, Isabel stated, the words landing like stones in a heavy air. It said there was an accident, a fall near the stone wall. It said the injured twin, the one with the scar, was supposed to be given up for adoption. That was meant to be Alara. But our mother, in her grief, her confusion, she made a different choice. She gave away the other twin, the one who witnessed the fall but wasn't physically hurt. She gave away Isabel. Me, she kept Alara. You. Isabel's finger jabbed towards a woman. You stayed. You grew up as Alara. You didn't fall. You didn't get this scar. She pointed towards the woman's jaw. The woman stared, utterly exposed, speechless. The fight went out of her. Tears began to well, then streamed silently down her pale cheeks. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. So, Isabel pressed on, her voice trembling now, fueled by a rising tide of grief and anger. The woman I met in the cafe, the woman sitting here. You are Alara, my sister. But you lied. You constructed this elaborate story about the scar. Let me believe in this impossible connection, this shared mark of fate. Why? Why the lie? And the scar itself, if you didn't get it as a child, how do you have it now? It's identical. Perfect. Alara, the real Alara, let out a strangled sob, burying her face in her hands, her thin shoulders shaking violently. The sound was desolate, stripped bare of pretense. Several minutes passed, filled only by her heartbroken weeping and the mournful sigh of the wind. Finally, slowly, she lifted her head. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red-rimmed, filled with a devastating cocktail of guilt, fear, and utter desperation. I'm not Alara, she whispered, the confession so quiet Isabel almost didn't hear it. Isabel felt a fresh wave of cold shock, confusion replacing the certainty. What? What are you talking about? The diary. The real Alara, the woman choked out the words, each one seeming to cause her immense effort. The one our mother kept to your sister, she died 15 years ago. The word struck Isabel like a physical blow. She was 16. A car accident. Instant. The ground seemed to vanish beneath Isabel's feet. Dead? The sister she'd just discovered. The sister whose identity this woman had apparently assumed was gone? The brief flicker of hope for some kind of true connection, even a fraught one, extinguished instantly. The reunion, the shared laughter, the uncanny similarities, all built upon the ghost of a dead girl. Then who? Isabel breathed, the question hanging in the chilled air. Who are you? The woman took a deep, shuddering breath, gathering the tattered remnants of her composure. My name is Clara. Clara Holloway. I was a distant cousin. Our mothers were related, third or fourth cousins, I think. They kept in touch occasionally, letters mostly. After Alara died, her mother, our biological mother, she was destroyed. My branch of the family heard about it, vaguely. We knew about the tragedy. We also knew the stories whispered about the other twin, the one given away years before. Clara stared down at her twisting hands. Years passed. My own life, it didn't turn out well. Mistakes were made. Opportunities lost. I was adrift, alone. My own mother passed away, and while sorting through her things, I found a box of old letters. Letters from Alara's mother. Detailed letters. Talking about the adoption, about the search someone had initiated through an ancestry service. Your name, Isabel, listed as Alara Carmichael. Clara looked up, her eyes pleading, desperate for understanding, if not forgiveness. I looked you up online. Found your profile. Your picture. The resemblance, it wasn't exact, not like you and Alara, but there was a family likeness. Enough. And I read your posts, saw pictures, you sometimes mention the scar, the story of the fall. Isabel felt a wave of nausea, bile rising in her throat. What did you do, Clara? I became fixated, Clara confessed, her voice cracking, with the idea of her life, of your connection. This incredible story of separated twins finding each other. It felt like destiny, a chance to escape my own failures, my own emptiness, to step into a life that mattered. I researched everything. Ilara's life, what little I could find. Your life, from what you shared online. And the scar, I knew it was a key, the undeniable physical proof, the thing that would make the connection absolute, unquestionable. Her gaze dropped, shamefaced, toward her own jawline. So I saved up, found a cosmetic surgeon known for discretion. Excellent work with scar revision, reconstruction. I showed him photos. Your photos, downloaded from your public profiles. I told him I'd had a similar injury years ago, badly stitched, and wanted it revised to match an old family photo for sentimental reasons. He asked few questions. He replicated it perfectly. Isabel stared, aghast, the full weight of the deception crashing down on her. The scar wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a lie about the past. It was a deliberate physical forgery, a surgical procedure undertaken with chilling premeditation to impersonate the dead and deceive the living, etched into her skin to steal a connection, a history that wasn't hers. You had surgery? Isabel whispered, the betrayal absolute visceral. To copy my scar? To pretend to be my dead sister? I just wanted... Clara broke down again, the words lost in ragged sobs. I just wanted to belong, to have someone, a family. I saw your posts, your hope, your longing for your twin. I thought I could be her for you. That maybe we could both have the story we wanted. The confrontation reached its peak, not with raised voices or threats, but with a horrifying, pathetic truth laid bare. Isabel felt suspended in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Sharp grief for Ilara, the sister lost before she was found. Cold rage at Clara's calculated violation. A disorienting pity for the profound emptiness that drove such an act. An overwhelming sense of personal violation. The uncanny mystery wasn't rooted in fate or strange phenomena, but in the depths of human loneliness and the terrifying lengths someone would go to fabricate a life. Stealing not just a name, but the very physical marks of shared past. In the gray aftermath of the confession, a heavy, stunned silence descended. Clara remained hunched on the bench, her quiet weeping the only sound disturbing the park stillness. Isabel felt hollowed out. The roller coaster of emotions, the dizzying joy of discovery, the creeping unease, the cold shock of the diary, the confrontation's raw anger, had drained away, leaving behind a vast, aching emptiness. Grief settled in, profound and complex. Grief for Ilara, the actual twin, forever lost, a ghost in a story she never got to live. Grief for the stolen connection. The beautiful illusion Clara had so carefully crafted, now revealed as a grotesque performance. What Clara had done was unforgivable. A deep, multifaceted violation of trust, of identity, of memory. She had preyed on Isabel's deepest longing, manipulated her emotions, and surgically altered her own body to perpetuate the lie. The premeditation was chilling, yet looking at the broken figure weeping on the bench, Isabel didn't feel the catharsis of pure rage she might have expected. Instead, a profound, weary sorrow washed over her. Sorrow for the crushing loneliness that must have festered within Clara to drive her to such extreme, desperate measures. Sorrow for the tangled, tragic mess their shared biological history had become. Should she call the police? Report the impersonation? The potential fraud involved in accessing databases or misrepresenting herself. The thoughts surfaced logical and just. Clara's actions weren't just emotionally damaging. They likely crossed legal lines. But Isabel hesitated, dragging Clara through the legal system. Exposing her pathetic, desperate act to the world, what would it achieve? It wouldn't bring Alara back. It wouldn't magically heal the deep wound of deception. It wouldn't restore the stolen moments of authentic connection she thought she'd had. It felt like inflicting more pain, perpetuating the cycle of fractured lives. It wouldn't provide closure, only consequences. After what felt like a long time, measured only by the slow drift of clouds overhead, Isabel finally stood up. Her legs felt heavy, stiff. Clara looked up sharply, her tear-streaked face filled with apprehension, clearly bracing for condemnation, for retribution. "Go," Isabel said, her voice quiet, flat, devoid of accusation or forgiveness. Just emptiness. "Just leave. Get help, Clara. But don't ever contact me again. Don't try to find me. This ends now." Clara stared at her for a moment, perhaps searching for something else in Isabel's expression. Finding nothing but exhaustion, she nodded mutely, without another word. She gathered her bag, scrambled to her feet, and hurried away across the damp grass, a diminished figure quickly swallowed by the indifferent cityscape. She didn't look back. Isabel watched her until she disappeared from view, feeling only a profound sense of depletion. She returned to her life, the meticulously ordered existence of Alara Carmichael. It was the only name she'd ever known, the identity shaped by 30 years of lived experience. Legally, she remained Alara, but internally, the knowledge of her true name, Isabel, settled within her, not as a replacement, but as a quiet, underlying truth, a layer of complexity added to her understanding of self. She shared the story carefully, gently, with her adoptive parents. The discovery of the diary, the truth of the switch, her original name, the tragic fate of her biological twin, Alara. They listened with shock, sadness, and unwavering support, their love a constant anchor in the swirling chaos of her origins. Learning about Alara's death brought a specific, poignant grief for the sister she would now never meet, the other half of her biological equation silenced 15 years prior. The unsettling mystery of the identical scar found its resolution, not in the realm of the paranormal or the synchronicity of fate, but in the stark, uncomfortable terrain of human psychology. A story of profound loneliness, identity theft, and the disturbing lengths one person would go to manufacture belonging. The truth was mundane in its mechanics, cosmetic surgery, careful research, but devastating in its implications. It left Isabel with a complex tapestry of loss, anger, pity, and a strange, unsettling understanding of the human need for connection. She never heard from Clara Holloway again. Occasionally, late at night, she wondered what became of her. Did she seek the help Isabel suggested? Or did she simply drift away, searching for another narrative, another identity to inhabit, another life to borrow? The thought left a lingering chill. Isabel continued her work at the Historical Society, finding a renewed, poignant significance in preserving the authentic records of the past. The faint, pale scar remained on her jawline. It was no longer just memento of a childhood fall. It was now a complex symbol, a mark of her own survival, a testament to her lost twin, and a permanent reminder of the woman who tried and failed to steal her story. The feeling of incompleteness hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. It was now infused with the concrete knowledge of what she had lost, not once, but twice. The sister taken by fate, and the sister fabricated by deceit. The reunion that promised wholeness had delivered a chilling, unforgettable lesson in the fragility of truth and the haunting power of a lie etched into flesh.